You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 44. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello and welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. We are your hosts, Craig
and Jeff Hewlett.
And this week, Jeff, we have, I guess, what you'd have to call an iconic episode of the series, The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah, I was kind of struggling with the how to describe this episode in the pantheon of Trek history. I was thinking I wanted to say the most popular, but then I was like, well, really, is it the most popular? I wasn't really sure. And then I realized the answer was kind of right in front of me. It's the only episode that gets its own exclusive disc on the Blu-ray set. That's pretty much the most popular, I would think.
Oh, wow. You know what? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's the only episode that has its own exclusive disc. And I guess the reason for that is that the disc not only includes the original Tribbles episode, the enhanced Tribbles episode, but it also includes the animated series sequel, the DS9 Tribbles episode, where they revisit the Enterprise, and two documentaries on the DS9 Tribbles episode. So it is a packed disc.
Yeah, well, and it's also got a commentary track from... Wow, you know what? I'm looking at the menus now. I didn't even realize it had all this extra stuff on it. That's awesome, because I had to change discs to watch this episode, and I just put the disc on.
Yeah, I did too. And well, I noticed I have to give a nod. You know, I highly doubt that the guy responsible for, or girl, responsible for creating the Blu-ray menus is listening to this show. But in case they ever do, I have to commend you for putting the word episode in the menu as opposed to episodes.
Oh,
so
right, yeah.
One episode. Usually it says episodes on the menu, but this one says episodes, singular. So kudos for getting the word right, not just doing the lazy cut paste and putting the same menu on.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of that extra material that you mentioned on our special supplemental episode. So I guess we'll talk that then. But is there anything going on Trek-wise this week?
Couple minor things. One will be the Calgary Stampede Parade will be kicked off by Parade Marshal William Shatner.
Man, he is so busy.
That guy is doing so much stuff. I mean, I don't know. He always talks about how he has all the horses that he rides and all these competitions. When the hell is he ever home?
I don't know. That weekend we're seeing him in Vegas for the convention. He's doing an Arizona Comic-Con on Friday and Saturday. And then he's coming to Vegas on Sunday.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, you know, I will say to William Shatner, should you ever have it happen to listen to this episode, I will say, shame on you for forsaking the biggest Trek convention in the world for a Wizard World convention. You're doing 2 days there and then doing 1 day at the Trek convention. Come on, man.
Well, you know what I really got to say is I got to say shame on Leonard Nimoy, who will be at that Wizard World convention and won't be coming to Vegas.
I thought he was just dialing in via Skype or something.
To the Wizard World one?
He's actually going to be there in person?
They're selling tickets for it.
Yeah, I swore that I read somewhere that he was dialing into that, like you'd see him on a screen or something.
I would hope that's the case, because if he could do Wizard World and not come to, to Vegas right after that.
I mean, he's supposedly retired from doing conventions a while ago. It would surprise me if he actually showed up in person. I could be very wrong.
I'll have to go back and look.
I don't think the convention site really says much, but I thought I read an article a few weeks ago that mentioned that he was going to be there, but via video conference type thing.
Yeah, but that stinks. Why couldn't he do that for Vegas?
Well, he's sitting in his underpants at home.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Yes, we are.
This parade in Canada, they're honoring Shatner. He was their Grand Marshal.
They picked him to be the marshal of the Calgary parade, and he says he's looking forward to it. He's been to Calgary before, but he's never been to the Stampede itself. So he says leading the parade will be quite a way to experience my first time.
Yeah.
So good for him. And it's July 4th through 13th, which is quite a long Stampede.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm sure, hopefully, some footage from that will find its way online via either news reports or fan taken footage.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure somebody will have some photos or some videos available at some point. Let's see what else is floating around out there. Well, looks like next gen stuff. Patrick Stewart will be in a documentary about Twitter.
That's interesting.
Strangely enough, yeah. So there'll be a supposedly at the Cannes Film Festival in France later this year. There'll be a documentary about social media, and he will be part of that.
Oh,
which is interesting. I'm not sure what that means.
And when's that due to come out?
Oh, he doesn't say. There's no date on that.
Okay.
Just
what the Cannes Film Festival is where a lot of studios go, or a lot of producers go to sell films.
Right. Yeah. A lot of indie films.
Yeah, they were looking for distribution. So yeah. So we're probably quite a ways from that. That's neat.
Yeah. It could be interesting. I mean, Patrick Stewart he's been getting to be quite as busy as Shatner.
Yeah.
These days. I mean, he's been kind of spreading himself around quite a bit.
Hey, he's trying to give Shatner a run for his money.
Hey, well, you never know. I mean, I think Shatner is a little busier, but you never know.
Yeah.
Let's see. So the Star Trek The Exhibition.
Yeah, I read about this.
And this is kind of disconcerting to me because this thing is making the rounds now around parts of
the Midwest,
Europe.
Right?
Huh?
Oh, okay. No, I thought the Midwest. I thought it was going to be at the Mall of Americas.
I don't see anything about that. Maybe there's more in the list of locations, but I'm seeing it's going to be in Indonesia on May 31st. It was in Indonesia on May 31st. And Southeast Asia later this spring. So it'll be held at the Grandaria City Ground from May 31st to July 13th.
And this is what? It's like a traveling exhibition of all props and other items from
set pieces, things like that. Yeah.
So I wonder how much of that stuff was actually on display at the History of the Future Museum in Vegas.
I don't think much.
Yeah.
I don't think much because you get to sit in the captain's chair and have your picture taken.
Wow, that's pretty cool. From the original series bridge?
I'm going to assume that is the Next Generation bridge.
That's still pretty cool.
But still pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, so sets, props, costumes, and one-of-a-kind displays, as well as interactive kiosks.
Very neat.
Of which we didn't get any interactive kiosks at the History of the Future Museum. We got sets, we got props, some costumes, maybe some one-of-a-kind displays. Probably not that many in Vegas, but it seems like this exhibition has some things that you wouldn't have seen had you been to the experience.
That's cool. Too bad it's so far away.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll get to the States, at some point.
And what's it called? It's called Star Trek: The Exhibition.
Star Trek: The Exhibition.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be at the Mall of Americas, which doesn't help us that much at all.
Well, that's a long ride.
Yeah, I mean, it might as well be in Indonesia, right?
Yeah, that's a long ride. That's, I don't know, from us, I would think, that's about 10, 12 hours?
Oh, it has to be.
By car?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It looks like it's running June 9th through September 2nd.
Well, that kind of overlaps a little bit with this exhibition. I'm not sure if it's the same thing or not.
Wow, it's funny. We both found separate exhibitions.
This may be a completely different thing.
Yeah. It must be maybe just different people touring with the artifacts they have.
It must be two different sets of artifacts.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's collect a bunch of Star Trek collectibles,
and
we'll make our own exhibition. The Tricorder transmissions exhibition of Star Trek memorabilia.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, why not? Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
Let's get in on it. Well, finally, something that I was talking to you about earlier today that I was pretty excited about that you didn't seem as excited about as I did. There is a new Star Trek wallet and card holder that is being put out sometime in August, but is available for pre-order now. And it looks really cool to me. And
oh, yeah.
I'm going to be ordering one for myself because it's an original series themed wallet and card holder. Now, both of them feature the red, blue, and gold colors kind of littered throughout the presentation, but in a subtle way that looks kind of cool. And the wallet itself has it's a very thin format wallet that has a money clip on one side and a couple of slots for cards in the other. I really love that thin format wallet. So this is going to be right up my alley. And it's so subtle. The Star Trek references are so subtle that at first glance, if you didn't know it was a Star Trek wallet, you might not even figure that out.
Yeah. And I've been working a very like a money clip with a side for cards for a while now. So I'm very used to that now, and not sure I could ever go back to a wallet. But the card holder looked pretty interesting.
I've been using a combination card holder and money clip similar to yours, but yours is like metal.
Yeah.
Mine's like a leather one that has a magnetic money clip on one side and some card slots on the other. So this is very similar to the one that I'm using now, but the money clip is actually on the inside of a fold up, and there's a separate card holder that you can get that's a little more Trekkish. And we'll have a link in the show notes. It's on a website called entertainmentearth.com. So I took a little bit of a look into entertainmentearth.com just to see, what the deal was. I've never really looked at them before, and it looks like they're a pretty reputable site.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And it is a cool item because, like you said, it's a Trek item that is subtle enough not to scream, look at me, I have a Star Trek wallet.
Yeah, I've seen some Trek wallets in the past that have some very loud graphics on them. The big Trek logo. Maybe, I saw one that had a Kirk and Spock like photos actually emblazoned on the side, and it screams Star Trek. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to the show love stuff like that. And while I like stuff like that, I kind of feel like I want something a little more subtle that I know is a Star Trek wallet, and someone who's perceptive would know as a Star Trek wallet, but the general populace at large maybe wouldn't know off the top of their heads if they just kind of saw a glance of it.
Yeah, it would be almost like a secret handshake.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going for. Kind of like a sort of a nerd code kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, too bad it won't be here in time for the convention.
I know. I was a little bit upset when I clicked on the link and I looked at it and I was getting ready to throw my credit card in there and I said it won't ship until sometime in August. It's like, wow, that's a shame. Yeah. It would be really nice to have that for the convention, but
I wonder if any vendors are going to have a box that fell off the back of a truck.
Fell off? You never know. I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe some pre-release. So since it's in the beginning of August anyway, maybe we'll get a pre-release. But at any rate, are we ready to discuss the Tribbles?
I am ready.
Okay, and I am ready too. The air dates. The first airing of the Trouble with Tribbles was on December 29th of 1967. Easy to say that this was the final episode of 1967. And the remastered version happened on November 4th of 2006.
Right, and I have the TV Guide entry from December 29th, 1967. Captain Kirk, assigned to protect a vital grain shipment at a space station, finds that he has troubles with tribbles. That's right, tribbles. Balls of purring fluff that live on grain and are incredibly prolific. So I can imagine reading that TV Guide entry and saying, I gotta see that.
Yeah, what is that about? All right, so we will jump into our scene-specific commentary on the Trouble with Tribbles in 3, 2, 1.
So I gotta say, we've talked a lot about the remastered effects and how good I thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get a shot coming up that I thought started the episode, but it doesn't. That I think is one of the worst remastered effects we've seen.
Nice. All right, well, be sure to point that out. And while we're waiting to point that out, I will mention, to be the bearer of bad news once again, no Sulu in this episode.
Oh, wow. You know what?
Sulu does not get to be present
in this iconic episode.
On what may be the most popular episode.
Yeah. But we've got, Chekhov front and center here.
I know. I was thinking about that as I watched this, for the 15 millionth time, a couple days ago to do some research for this. And, Chekhov is the third member of a 3-man discussion group in the preparation room here. And I was like, wow, that's pretty significant. McCoy's not there.
Yeah.
It's Chekhov. And, Kirk is kind of quizzing Chekhov his knowledge on the nearest Klingon outpost, and you got some weird jokes going back and forth between, Chekhov does another one of those kind of like, little old lady Russian kind of jokes, and Kirk corrects him, and then Spock has to chime in with the facts, mentioning the Royal Academy of Old Britain, and it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, although that's a good indicator of the comedy that we're going to see throughout this episode.
Yeah, this is really the high point of comedy for Trek. I think you're not going to find another episode that was made to be a comedy, pretty much.
Yeah.
In Trek. And
we had Uhura doing a red alert there too, by the way.
Yeah, we did. That was kind of cool. It's a Code 1 emergency, which is a disaster call, according to Chekhov. But one thing, before we get too far past it, I want to mention that once again, Kirk refers to the Klingons as the Klingons. And it happens many times throughout this episode that they're called the Klingons.
You know what? Somebody should have ran with that when they decided to do the drastic sort of facelift to the Klingons for Next Gen, or even the, I guess the original series movies.
Oh,
they could have said that the Klingons were
it's perfect.
A very closely related, sort of like the Romulans.
Dude, I love that. That's great.
But even more related.
The small forehead guys were the Klingons, and the ones with the big foreheads were the Klingons.
Yeah,
we figured it out. Why did we figure that out and nobody else could? Is this what you're talking about?
This shot right here, it just, the stars don't look right to me, and the ship just looks plastic.
I kind of see where you're going with that.
And then even the space station to me looks like the space station looks too much like a model to me as well. I don't know. It just seems like for such an important episode, they would have really sweated making these effects.
Well, maybe there's not many external effects in this. Who's that jabroni in Sulu's spot? Who is that guy?
Oh, no idea.
Me neither. But I don't know how much special effects work they had to do in this episode. I mean, aside from general cleanup.
Yeah.
Making these the prints look really good, which they did. I mean, these look phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
The color is just, and we've mentioned this before in previous episodes, but man, I'll tell you, Kirk's got you can see the fuzzies on Kirk's shirt.
Yeah, and it's you can even compare it to the DVD releases of this, but we've also been doing that Monkeys podcast, Zilch, and I've been watching a lot of Monkeys episodes, and to watch two shows that were produced around the same time, and one really, really looks like it needs a lot of help, and then you watch Star Trek, and it's like night and day.
Yeah, exactly. Here's something that just occurred to me just this very second. We just saw an external shot of the space station K7.
Yeah.
And they're on the side of the top of the space station are the letter K and the number 7.
Mm-hmm.
This is outer space How many ships fly by that and don't know what it is? They need that K7 printed in big letters on the side of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I can see like helipad on the top of a building. You see the big circle with the H in it so you can know where to land. But, you know, it's not like there's 8 million space stations out there and you wouldn't know where you were, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, back to the episode. Is this the first time that we've been on a space station, or one of the first times we've been on an actual space station?
I think it probably is the first time, because I think every other time they've gone to like outposts and stuff that were on planets.
Yeah, so this maybe I'll have to go back and look again, but this may be the first time.
Yeah, because the only other one I'm thinking of is when Kirk was on trial there. What, court martial?
Yeah.
That was on a planet, right? That wasn't.
Yeah. I think it was an actual planet. Yeah, it was a planet, right?
Yeah. That was the only other thing I thought of in terms of that, the possibility of it being a space station.
Couldn't they come up with a better name than Sherman's Planet?
Yeah. So here we're getting a little bit, I guess, the gist of the plot. They were called to this satellite on an emergency distress signal that turned out to be kind of bogus. And this guy Barris is spelling out that they have a shipment of grain that needs to be protected.
Yeah, and it's called Quadrotriticale.
Yes.
And Spock has said that it is a combination of wheat and rye. So my question is, why the hell is it green?
I don't know. You also had another little bit of comedy where Barris starts to explain what it is, and Spock cuts him off, and of course knows exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, they really trashed this Barris guy throughout the entire episode. He's kind of like a heel in this.
Well, that's the thing, and I was going to talk about that with you. Is it seems like they almost set everybody up as the bad guy in this episode to I guess maybe create a little mystery.
Yeah, maybe. But, one thing that I thought about while I was watching this episode before and thinking about conversation topics was that every time we've seen a quote-unquote superior officer in Trek, they've always been in some sort of situation where they're in command or can commandeer command. And in this one, the guy is just a joke.
Yeah.
They don't even take him seriously. You know what I mean? We're used to seeing, a Commodore come on the ship and take control, or a diplomat come on the ship and take control, or at least have some influence. This guy has no clout, period.
Yeah.
So, very interesting change in the way they deal with either an equal or superior officer here.
Yeah.
And did you notice that waitress had like butterfly wings in the back of her outfit?
Yes.
What the hell's that about?
And we also had Cyrano Jones walk in.
Yes, we got a brief glimpse. Here he is again, Cyrano Jones, and he's now trying to deal in something called spike and flame gems.
Yeah.
Now, who knows?
Do you remember the scene in Star Wars, the first Star Wars, the one that we all call A New Hope, where in the special edition Han Solo talks to Jabba the Hutt?
Yes, yeah, the human Jabba the Hutt.
Have you ever seen the original footage before they put the digital Jabba the Hutt on?
Yeah, he was like a human being, and he had that weird outfit on, didn't he?
He reminds me of Cyrano Jones.
He kind of does.
Yeah,
good relation there. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, and this is actor Stanley Adams, who died in '77 at the age of 62 via a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So a sad end. He was on TV on The Thin Man, Make Room for Daddy, and he also reprised his role as Cyrano on the animated series episode More Tribbles, More Trouble.
Yeah, maybe his tribble selling business went to pot.
Yeah.
It's in poor taste. I apologize. Yeah, rest in peace, sir. I feel that anybody who takes their own life, it's pretty rough.
Yes.
It's pretty rough. So now, I don't know if you thought about this at all, but I was wondering to myself while I was watching through this episode.
Yeah.
It seems like in the character, the mannerisms, even the ways of speech.
Mud.
you could have had Mud in this episode instead of the Cyrano Jones guy, right? I mean, why did they need? Maybe they thought maybe 2 Mud episodes in a season was too much.
Yeah, but at that
It's
point,
perfect.
like you said, you should really, really tweak the character so people aren't thinking Mud. You go with somebody with a different body type, you know, and you know, I guess they're both snake oil salesmen, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess they're gonna have a similar delivery because it's that overly confident. You know, they're grifters.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you technically could have taken the Cyrano Jones character completely out and inserted Harry Mudd, and I think the episode may have actually been better.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It might have just been too awesome for some viewers though, with that much goodness crammed into it.
Perhaps.
So they're haggling. He's haggling with this this barkeep about the cost of the tribble.
Yeah, Gary Raymond.
Yeah,
the guy that played the barkeep also played a bartender in many '60s beer commercials.
Oh wow, look at that!
So fascinating that he reprised his role.
Yeah, and we saw the tribble in a nice cutaway shot was eating some of the grain.
Yeah, I like that. That the tribble was kind of moving on its own, and so from what I understand, there were only a handful of animatronic tribbles that were capable of moving around, and they just had kind of toys or whatever motors inserted inside them so they could jiggle around. But those particular tribbles are a highly sought after collector's item in the Trek fandom universe of people who collect Trek memorabilia. So apparently getting a tribble itself, a real set used tribble, is not that difficult a thing. There were a lot of them, but getting one of the ones that actually had the motorized pieces within it that would make it jiggle around is a little tougher.
You know what though? I would really I mean, how confident can you be that you're getting an actual
tribble? I don't know. That must be a tough.
I guess any of those props, you're taking a leap of faith, though.
Yeah. No, and I agree. That's tough. I mean, they could probably make a million knockoffs, but
and they have.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll see many of them at the convention coming up. Did you find it kind of curious though that when Uhura takes a hold of that tribble, she adopts the tribble. She doesn't ask anything about how you feed it.
Yeah.
Or care for it. She just takes it.
Yeah.
You wonder, like, what do you feed them? How do you care for them? Is there something you have to do? Do you have to wash them? What do you have to do?
Yeah, she didn't get instructions like the kid did with the gremlin.
I was going to go there.
Or the mogwai.
We are on the same wavelength. I was going to go there. So, quick thing to mention here. In the background of this scene, you see the Enterprise flying past the window. Right?
Yeah.
Behind. So in the original episode, that Enterprise was actually one of those AMT models.
Okay, cool.
So they've shown up a bunch of times in the series.
Yeah.
So this was another place where they used the AMT model to substitute for an Enterprise model.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. That speaks volumes to the accuracy of the AMT model. So.
Yeah, and that's why it's so cool to have these remasters, because you can go back and forth. And now we have our Klingons.
The Klingons, and the Klingon himself actually calls them the Klingons.
Yeah, and we have a returning William Campbell.
Yep.
Trelane
as a Klingon. A Klingon.
As Koloth?
Koloth.
Yeah, and they wanted to bring back Kor from Errand of Mercy, but he was actually unavailable to take the job.
That's a shame.
Kuhn wanted to bring him back and have sort of a recurring villain.
Yeah, like a rival Klingon captain.
Yeah, and do you notice his other Klingon?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that is Michael Pataki as Korax. Died in 2010, age 72. He shows up on an episode of Next Gen as well.
Oh, nice.
But we probably both know him most from, aside from this episode, is Rocky IV?
Oh.
He plays Nikolai Koloff. He's the one that says, whatever he hits, he
He
destroys.
destroys. That's great. What a now we have to mention that on Slycast.
Yes. You know, it's funny, and I know we're going to be talking about that movie very soon on Slycast. So
how apropos that this came up around the same time.
Yeah. But how cool is it to see William Campbell playing the Klingon here? Did it take you out of the episode at all?
No, not really. I mean, I recognize him, but he doesn't look exactly the same to me. So it's I don't know how many people picked up on that, especially back in the days when these were originally broadcast, because the episodes were so far apart.
Yeah.
And there was no way for you to go back and watch the Trelane episode over again.
Yeah.
You know, so chances are, I mean, most people probably didn't figure that out.
Yeah.
I mean, today, well, you can just fire up any episode you want anytime.
Yeah.
It's a much different world now.
Yeah. I think it's cool though, and I think it speaks to his skills as an actor that he was able to play two very, very, very different characters on the same series.
Yeah, it's very cool that and in such a way that you don't really pick up on it.
Yeah.
Without further research. And back then, I mean, how could you research something like that?
Yeah. So it turns out, as far as we know, Uhura's Tribble was pregnant and had babies.
Well, that's what they theorized. They theorized that the Tribble was pregnant when she got it, but little did they know that all you have to do is feed a Tribble for it to multiply. Now, I love the Spock moment here where Spock is kind of explaining the purring sound that the Tribble makes and how it has some sort of a calming effect on the human nervous system, and then he proceeds to say it has no effect on him because he's not... Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It was having an effect on him, and then he gets kind of incred and puts the Tribble down and walks away.
Yeah. And I love how Uhura says there, sure, they're old enough, take them.
They're what? They're like an hour old?
They're hours old at this point, but I guess they were full grown?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, they looked like they were different sizes, but...
where's like the intergalactic like animal welfare department?
Yeah, you would think that there would be one. Well, now seems like a good time to mention the fact that the Tribble purring effects were actually a mixture of dove coos, screech owl cries, and the sound of emptying balloons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so you probably can't pick those individual things out because they're mixed together quite well, and I'm sure they're slowed down to make that sound that the Tribbles make, but that's kind of the combination of the three sounds that make up that bizarre noise that they make.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about sound design in general from this period and even through the 70s is, you know, it was pre synth, so you were creating all your sounds with whatever you could. You go out in the field with a recorder and start recording. I know on the and I always hate doing cross talk here, but on the Star Wars Blu-rays, there are a lot of interviews with Ben Burett, who did the sound for Star Wars, and like the laser shots are like a steel tension rod being hit with a metal mallet, you know, to get that like laser beam effect. So it's really neat, and that's stuff you don't really think about. So that's awesome. I hadn't even thought about how they created the Tribble effect.
Speaking of things you don't think about, did you notice what McCoy just did?
No.
Kirk walked into sickbay complaining about my headache, and what did McCoy give him? A pill.
Wow.
Not a hypo.
Yeah.
A pill out of a bottle. And Kirk popped it dry.
Wow.
No water. That's hardcore. So I don't recall seeing a heck of a lot of pills dispensed on the Enterprise in the past. So that may be a first. I'm going to have to look that up again. But that was interesting to me that McCoy shook a pill out of a bottle and handed it to Kirk instead of just some kind of hypo.
Yeah.
You would think. I mean, everything else has been a hypo.
So this scene here is Scotty and Chekhov and another crew member enjoying a little bit of shore leave.
which Kirk had to force Scotty to go on. By the way.
he was studying technical manuals and said that was his way of relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
But writer of this episode, David Gerald, was actually supposed to be the third man here.
Ah.
And he wouldn't get an appearance until the motion picture. But yeah, he was slated to do that, and I don't remember why he wasn't able to do that, and somebody else got the role.
That's a shame.
But writer David Gerald, born 1944, he also wrote, of course, the animated episode, More Tribbles, More Trouble. He also is a multi-award winner. He won the Hugo, the Locust, and the Nebula for his short novelette, The Martian Child, in 1995.
Wow.
And he also created the Slee Stacks in The Lost.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, and I haven't listened to his commentary on this episode, but I am definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to that shortly too. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Mr. Cohen. Now, if you look at the general architecture of the space station that we're looking at right now, would you say that compares pretty much exactly to the architecture and design of the Enterprise?
It's definitely a very similar design scheme.
Okay. Now, say you're on the Enterprise for an extended period of time. You're flying around the galaxy. You're on various different missions. Now you get to this space station that looks exactly like the ship you've been on for months at a time. Would you consider this shore leave?
Not really.
It looks the same as the ship you were on.
Yeah.
How relaxing is it to go from the same place to the same place?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I guess it's the fact that the Enterprise doesn't have a full-fledged bar.
Maybe they do and we just don't know. The Next Generation had one.
Yeah. So now we've got some Klingon taunting, and Chekhov really wants to take the bait here and start a fight, but Scotty, being the mature, I guess the senior crew member, is just saying, let it slide. They're just words.
Mm-hmm.
And we also got the start of a running sort of clue throughout this episode that the Tribbles do not like Klingons.
Right, and yeah, that's going to come up later on. It's going to be a critical point in this episode. Now, we got a minute before the fight breaks out. So I want to point out real quick that before this happened, we had a little bit of a discussion between Scotty and Chekhov, which is that doesn't happen very often in the series. But there was a discussion where Chekhov and Scotty were comparing their alcoholic beverages.
Yes.
Chekhov drinking vodka, and Scotty kind of poo-pooing the vodka, saying that it was soda pop in Scotland.
Yeah.
So vodka is typically 35 to 40% alcohol when bottled, and Scotch is typically 40 to 46%. So they're not that different, unless you're getting into aged varieties where Scotch can get up to 150% alcohol. So I don't know how accurate that is based on what they're drinking there, but Scotty may have a point depending on how aged that stuff is.
Yeah. So now the Enterprise has been called garbage?
A garbage. Well, yeah, it was called a sagging old rust bucket designed like a garbage scow. But they insulted Kirk before that, calling Kirk a swaggering, overbearing, tin-plated dictator with delusions of godhood, and comparing him to Regulan bloodworms.
Yes. Which Scotty remembers that exact quote for later.
He does. He does when Kirk calls him out on it. So now that Scotty throws the first punch, and we get a kind of a weird fight scene with guys that don't look like Klingons at all.
Yeah.
They're kind of pale for Klingons. And the thing that really sticks out to me about this fight scene is that some of the Klingons are really tough and some of them are not.
Yeah. Well, it really seems like they really didn't stick too true to the errand of mercy Klingon design.
No.
They're wearing the same clothes.
Right.
But that's about it.
They did. Well, and later on in another series, they start to establish the fact that Klingons are physically tougher more robust than humans are.
Yeah.
So therefore, a fight between a human and a Klingon is heavily slanted in favor of the Klingon from a physical aspect. And in this, you're seeing Scotty pretty much knocking the crap out of every Klingon.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a difference between the original series and subsequent series and or movies, as it were.
Yeah, and then we've got Cyrano sort of taking advantage of the drink. The
replicator.
Yeah,
and wouldn't you think there was some sort of security protocol that you needed some sort of special code or some sort of fingerprint recognition to get through that thing?
Although maybe the barkeep had left it unlocked when he rushed away.
Yeah,
but
perhaps.
So this episode was directed by, and I'm thinking about that because of all of the pieces that are fitting together here. You have the fight cutting between Cyrano trying to make sure his drink doesn't spill. This is director Joseph Pevney again, who we've talked about a ton. We last talked about him on last episode, Wolf in the Fold. And the next time we're going to talk about him will be the final time we talk about him, and that will be for the episode The Immunity Syndrome. So we're coming up on the end of Pevney's, I believe, 14-episode run on Star Trek.
Well, that's a shame because he had some good ones.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss seeing that name.
Yeah, me too. Well, he had a good run.
Yeah,
he had a good run. Before we move on too far, I want to mention real quick before we get into this next scene that we heard a slang term that the Klingons or Klingons used to describe humans, and they called them Earthers.
Yeah.
Very interesting that they call them Earthers because we've found throughout the galaxy there are tons of different alien races that resemble humans.
Yes.
So that is a very specific term to reference humans that come from the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Which apparently all the people on the Enterprise, save Spock, are.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good observation.
Yeah. So now we're getting Chekhov has a heck of a bruise there.
Yeah.
Almost a shiner, but a little below his eye. So not technically a shiner. So Scotty's going to cave in and admit that he was the one that threw the first punch. And poor Kirk. Now, I was watching this scene earlier when I was writing up some notes for this episode of things to cover, and something that popped into my head. So Scotty is going to admit the fact that he threw the first punch because they insulted the Enterprise. And insulting Kirk didn't make him throw that first punch, and Kirk gets... In the words of the wonderful April A. Bear, Kirk seems to be quite butthurt about the fact that Scotty didn't get mad that the Klingons were insulting his captain, but waited until they insulted the ship before he took up fisticuffs with the Klingons. Oh, that's funny. But it's funny that Kirk refuses to make this an off-the-record conversation.
Yeah.
Scotty asks if this is off the record, and Kirk says, "No, are you kidding me? This is on the record, brother.
Yeah,
you're on the record as throwing that first punch, man, and you're gonna serve your time in your quarters for it."
Mm-hmm.
But this is funny because Scotty's gonna be happy about getting sent to his quarters because now he can read those technical manuals.
Yeah, which is what he wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of when I was a little kid and I'd get sent to my room, but my mom wouldn't unhook my Nintendo. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to my room. Mario Brothers it is.
Yeah.
They called the Enterprise a garbage scow. Wow, that's a tough one. And you're going to hear, here's Kirk looking butthurt. Scotty, poor Kirk, I feel bad for him here.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, like, these guys are loyal to me, right? I'm the best captain there is. And then poor Scotty's like, yeah, it was a matter of pride. They insulted my ship. That's a shame. Poor Kirk. He is a great captain.
Yeah. I think the comedy in this episode really, really works.
It does.
It doesn't feel forced to me.
It does. Well, it doesn't. But it's a shame that Kirk doesn't know that Chekhov was ready to throw down when they were insulting the captain, right?
Yeah.
Because Chekhov was ready to jump in when they were bad-mouthing Kirk. And only Scotty waited till they actually talked about the ship.
Yeah.
So Chekhov was in the right place. in my mind. So here's a debate. Here is a staple McCoy and Spock moment where Spock is kind of judging the Tribbles on their usefulness and saying they have no use whatsoever. And McCoy is taking the emotional approach, saying, well, they kind of bring me some pleasure. They bring humans some joy and pleasure. So therefore, that makes up for the fact that they're consuming tons of our resources.
Yeah.
They're making people happy. Mm-hmm. And Spock, being a logical guy, is saying, well, there's no way to really quantify human happiness in terms of its relationship to the consumption of food resources.
Right.
Right? So we can't justify these Tribbles eating through our stores of food in order to make people happy. Mm-hmm. So now that's an interesting demonstration of what the ship would be like under Spock, I guess. Happiness would take a back seat. He's got a point, though.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a point. So we learned a little bit about Tribble physiology from that last scene, too, is that Tribbles are, quote-unquote, born pregnant, and they say they're bisexual, reproducing at will. I think they may have meant to say asexual.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't imply that they have to have any sort of Tribble sex in order to reproduce. All they have to do is eat and divide, right? Eat and spit out new Tribbles.
Yeah.
So bisexual really shouldn't come into play.
I wonder if the definition or the way bisexual was used in the 60s is different than it's known now.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. The writer of this episode, David Gerald, is a homosexual.
Oh.
A gay man. So
okay.
I'm not sure how that plays into the use of the terminology, but that's one of those things I go back and maybe research and see if bisexual had different meaning.
Yeah, perhaps. There was one of those rare moving Tribbles, by the way, on that railing before. So it was kind of like sort of sauntering towards Kirk, and Kirk picked it up, and it's no longer moving, strangely.
Yeah, there must have been an off switch they showed him to hit.
Yeah, maybe. But that was interesting because it kind of like swiggled. It like its butt kind of moved a little bit left and right there as it was sliding, or its back half, rather. So I wonder if that's the rarest Tribble.
Yeah, I can't imagine that any of these survived.
You think?
Because if you think about it, Star Trek ran 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. It went off the air with, from every indication, little fanfare. I mean, it wasn't given a huge, final episode send-off. I mean, it wasn't, nowadays they make them events. Mm-hmm. I mean, Star Trek was pretty much, it wasn't put on mothballs. It was sent out to die.
Right, yeah,
so
it was pretty much.
Who would have held on to this stuff?
It's a good question.
I mean,
it could have been left laying around in a lot of props, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like the Enterprise bridge it didn't survive.
Yeah, well, it was probably all thrown in a dumpster.
Yeah.
But, Uhura just name-dropped Cyrano Jones. Is that the first time we've heard his name?
It's possible.
In this episode?
Yeah.
So then Kirk just said it again, find Cyrano Jones. But that may have been the first time we actually heard his name in this episode. And we're about halfway in already.
Yeah.
And we've seen him a few times. So, interesting. And there he is. Now we're matching the name to the face of Cyrano Jones. So at any rate, this is another one of those scenes where I can see Harry Mudd sitting in that chair being interrogated.
Yeah.
It seems to me like this is Harry Mudd just in a different body. Seriously, I mean, when I was listening to the way he speaks during this segment, it just felt to me like he was almost channeling that character.
Could you imagine if they had done that with the remaster?
Oh, like totally erase Cyrano Jones and put Harry Mudd. They could probably pull it off.
Yeah, they use footage from the from the Mudd episodes, and they do some digital chicanery.
That would have been a totally straight up Lucas way to do it. I mean, they just put Hayden Christensen in the background somewhere. Oh, great, good times. Well, see, now here's a very strange sequence of events that's just popping up. So you've got Barris storming in with his little snot-nosed assistant here, and they're going to accuse Cyrano Jones of being a Klingon agent.
Yeah.
And of course, Kirk kind of laughs it off, as he's been doing to this guy the entire episode. Never takes anything he says seriously. But I think it's very interesting that they would say that Cyrano Jones was a Klingon agent.
Yeah, I mean...
That's kind of a really big jump, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I'm not even sure where that came, kind of out of left field in a way.
Yeah. Well, and that sort of plays into the whole let's try and paint everybody as the villain here.
Yeah, and I think his assistant says that Cyrano Jones was within the Klingon sphere of influence less than 4 months ago. What the hell is the Klingon sphere of influence? And then Spock kind of counters it by saying, listen, we ran a background check on this dude, and he's a licensed asteroid prospector.
Yeah.
And a dealer in some sort of in antiquities or some sort of space oddities. The buying and selling of rare merchandise, including tribbles.
Yeah. And his one-man spaceship.
One-man spaceship.
Yeah. And Barris here, we should talk about Barris real quick.
Sure,
That's actor William Shallert, born 1922.
God
he
love
also
him.
appeared on DS9 episode Sanctuary.
Yeah, well, Shallert's been everywhere, man.
Yeah, you've probably seen him in something. He's notable for the Patty Duke Show.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you remember the Pop-Tart commercials with Milton the Toaster, he did the voice of Milton.
Cool.
And he was also SAG president from 79 to 81. So,
good for him.
He's, 92 as we record this episode.
Oh, very cool, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, he's had a hell of a long career because I've seen him all over the place.
Yeah, he's one of those people you notice instantly. I mean, we could have spent this whole commentary running through his filmography.
Yeah. Well, maybe someday in a supplemental, maybe we'll jump into some of the guest stars.
Yeah. So Kirk's chicken sandwich and coffee.
I was going to bring that up. Who orders a chicken sandwich with coffee?
Yes.
That's a really strange combination.
Well, that's like, I don't know, like my grandfather used to drink coffee with everything.
Ooh.
So I don't know. Like for me, I always equate that with like, oh, I guess you hit a certain age and you just start drinking
coffee with every meal.
With every meal. Chicken sandwich. I mean, I've never thought to drink coffee with chicken.
No, that kind of struck me as odd as a combination. So here's a funny thing: is Kirk just said to have them meet him and Spock by the grain storage area, but now they beam into the same place they beamed, and the guys are still waiting there for him.
Yeah,
not by the grain storage, but in the actual quarters.
And they also they beamed with tribbles too, which I don't know. That would make me nervous.
Yeah. Well, I guess the transporter is smart enough not to mix the two things together, but it's not like Brundlefly, right? I mean, it could be like Tribble Kirk.
Yeah, it still seems to me like everybody's way too trusting of this Energize that technology.
Yeah. A couple days later, Kirk wakes up with fur growing out of him. All over the place. He starts to purr, right?
Yeah. So here we get an iconic.
Oh, absolutely iconic scene with there's some great discussion of this moment on the documentaries that are included on the Blu-ray, where some of the crewmen who are throwing extra tribbles down onto Shatner were just enjoying the hell out of it. But the fact is they couldn't see Shatner through the hole.
Yeah.
So they just kept throwing tribbles.
Oh, that's funny.
Not knowing when they were supposed to stop. And some of these incredulous looks that Shatner is giving is because he's like wondering when they're going to stop throwing the tribbles.
Yeah.
Onto his head.
And then Spock gives the exact count of tribbles, which is pretty amazing.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you brought that up, because the estimate that Spock gives on how many tribbles there were in the course of 3 days, whether they be dead or alive, starting out with one Tribble, was based on a very simple mathematic formula that doesn't necessarily follow the formula that he expressed when he described how he came up with it.
Really?
Yeah. So now numerically, according to what I've read, is accurate. So he's assuming that that a Tribble produces a litter of 10 every 12 hours. Now, assuming that that is true, over the course of 3 days, if you do the math, it turns out to be 1,771,561 Tribbles, which is what Spock says. But Spock also says that that's taking into account the amount of grain consumed and the volume of the grain container. Now, the equation that he uses does not take into account the amount of food consumed at the side of the grain. It only takes into account the number of Tribbles theoretically born in every litter, which is 10 to every one Tribble.
Yeah.
So while it is accurate in one respect, it may not be accurate in all respects.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, so that I throw that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little comedic moment there from McCoy as well, running in, saying that if we just stop feeding the Tribbles, they won't multiply anymore.
Yeah. And they're still coming down.
That's what I'm saying. The guys are just throwing. See the look that Shatner's giving? They just keep throwing Tribbles on top of his head.
I'd imagine that would really make acting difficult.
Oh, I would think so.
Because you're constantly getting thrown off of your game.
Yeah,
if you're no longer expecting them.
Yeah, no wonder he's getting in cred.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into any more of the reveals here, I want to present something to you.
Sure.
Another thought that I had. So there's Tribbles everywhere, right? There's almost 2 million total Tribbles, right?
Yeah.
Don't Tribbles take dumps? Wouldn't there be Tribble poop all over the place?
Well, don't the Tribbles basically use the food to multiply?
Well, we use the food to multiply and we still poop.
No, but
we use the food to fuel our bodies and to produce our reproductive stuff. And I mean, the Tribbles have to have some waste product.
Yeah, but I mean, Tribbles can sustain themselves without eating, yes?
Why, that's not established on this show.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can say that for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there would be Tribble poop, or at least Tribble pee. They don't have to drink any water? They don't need hydration?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they're an alien species, but I don't think there's any evidence anywhere that would suggest that there's any creature alive that we know of that does not produce any sort of waste whatsoever. So, at any rate, I'm just putting that out there.
And here we
go. Just in time for that moment to happen.
The payoff that they've been teasing the entire episode.
Yep. So Arn Darvin has had the Enterprise is in the window again. So every time we see this window, the Enterprise is in it. But yeah, so Arn Darvin has apparently raised the ire of Tribbles. They don't care for Arn Darvin. So Kirk is going to perform a very unscientific experiment by holding some Tribbles near some Klingons, then holding some Tribbles near some Vulcans, and then holding some Tribbles near some humans again, and then holding some Tribbles near Arn Darvin again to prove that there's something strange going on with this Arn Darvin character.
And this is kind of a trope that is this one of the first instances where this sort of happened? Because, you have, movies and TV shows that would later on, like the Terminator series, the dogs were able to sniff out Terminators.
Oh, yeah, good call. So animals are more keenly aware than humans are of certain traits. Well, not more keenly aware of McCoy's tricorder.
Yeah.
That can apparently detect that he's a Klingon.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So I guess he just shaved?
I guess so. See, now this is the advantage of being a Klingon as opposed to a Klingon, because he doesn't have the raised forehead, so he can look like a human, like a tan human.
Yeah.
Just by shaving his facial hair, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why no humans have facial hairs, right? None of the Enterprise crew is allowed to have facial hair because they may get confused with a Klingon.
Yeah. So now we're getting the big reveal here of what the Klingons' plan was. So they infected the grain with a virus.
Yeah, the Quadrotriticale has been poisoned, and the Tribbles have in effect become the saviors as opposed to the villains.
Yeah.
In this, so what a turn of events, eh? Wow.
And this Klingon really gives it up easy.
Yeah, he does. Well, you know what I'm wondering to myself when I saw how easily he gives up the jig here. Why are Klingons so afraid of Tribbles?
They can't do anything to him.
I know. It's like they have no mouths. They can't bite you.
Unless the purring sensation is somehow displeasing. As pleasing as it is to humans, it creates pain or annoyance in Klingons.
Yeah, but Klingons, I mean, maybe back then they weren't, but Klingons, in the series past this, are notorious for being able to withstand great amounts of pain.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't see Worf shrugging off a Tribble.
No, not at all. So maybe that's the difference between Klingons and Klingons.
Yeah. So now Cyrano is what his punishment. This is another Kirk.
Yeah, Kirk kind of usurping the law.
Yeah.
In a way, and giving Cyrano his own version of punishment by making him pick up, quote unquote, pick up every Tribble on the K7 station.
Which is going to take what? Something close to 17 years?
17.9 years, according to Spock.
Yeah.
But now, picking them up and putting them where?
Yeah.
They're still on the station, right? What's he supposed to do with all of these Tribbles?
Yeah. And he's being punished for what? For doing business illegally?
Yeah, I guess he was dealing in animals that may be harmful to human life or something of that nature. And the punishment is 20 years in a quote-unquote rehabilitation colony, or Kirk's 17.9 years of picking up every Tribble on the station.
Now, is that assuming that you do like an 8-hour shift every day?
I don't know. I don't know how you do the math on that.
I mean, for me, it's like 17.9 years, 20 years. What's going on at the rehabilitation colony?
Yeah, I'd sit in the rehabilitation colony with my feet up, 3 squares a day and a 3 hots and a cot. What do they say?
Well, at least maybe you're going to be on a planet somewhere too. Here, you're going to spend 17.9 years on a space station.
Yeah, relatively small looking space station too.
And Lundry's going to want he's going to want it to take 17.9 years to clean up all those Tribbles.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't they come up with a more creative solution? Like, couldn't they bring some of those flying omelets in to take out the Tribbles? I don't know. I mean, there seems like there's so many and so many things that we could deploy to take care of the Tribbles. But can you go in there with a phaser and just vaporize them all?
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be very humane.
Well, what else are they going to do with them?
Yeah, well, they could do what Scotty did.
Well, see, there's another thing that now I have a whole nother problem with that. Because the Klingons are going to kill them all.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much relegating these poor innocent life forms to death by putting them all on the Klingon ship.
Now, how did Scotty beam them all over there?
That's a damn good question. That is a damn good question.
Because we know that they can beam somebody up from a planet's surface or from this, without being on a transporter platform.
Right. So he gave every single Tribble on the Enterprise a communicator, and then beamed them off the ship. I don't know. It's not really described.
Yeah.
But so Kirk is quite incredulous here because he doesn't know what happened to the Tribbles, and everybody's kind of being real cagey about it. But then it turns into a big joke. As a ha, we beamed them all into the Klingons' engine room. And now we know that the Klingons have possession of all of these Tribbles from the Enterprise, and they're likely just going to vaporize them all and kill them. So I don't think that was a very funny ending. If PETA had anything to say about it.
Yeah, well, they're all getting
laughing.
into it.
And Uhura's laughing.
Yeah.
Uhura's laughing. So the episode is now over. And before we do our essential voting, I would be extremely remiss if I did not mention the fact that during the stills at the end of this episode, the Gorn gets a still shot during the credits.
Yeah, God, it's almost like they're taunting you.
I have to mention the fact that it was the second still shown in the credits. The Gorn gets a shot with his universal translator in his hand. So long live the Gorn. He is still going strong. So he's not gone yet.
Yeah.
So, all right, essential voting time. Let's just get right down to brass tacks here.
Okay. You want to go?
Yeah, well, I don't have much to say.
Neither do I. Other than based on the fact that, like you said, this got its own disc on the Blu-ray set. It's one of the most iconic episodes. It would be an episode that would cause major embarrassment if you were in that cocktail party setting and didn't know it. It had its own animated series spinoff. It sprinkled over into DS9. Tribble everybody knows what a Tribble is, even if they don't know Star Trek. So for me, this is hands down an essential episode, and it's a darn good episode to boot.
Well, I don't know how good I'd say it was. I mean, it's a fun episode to watch as far as, how good it is compared to what we consider the great episodes of Trek. It's funny and it's memorable, but, I wouldn't put it amongst my favorite Trek episodes by a long shot. But because of the introduction of the Tribble, which occurs several times throughout Trek history, you see it, like you said, in the animated series. It shows up in Deep Space Nine, and it also shows up in Into Darkness, the latest JJ reboot movie. I think that it is essential based solely on the introduction of the Tribble itself. Now, there is, in the JJ universe, now, if you watched Into Darkness, there is a Tribble that has been altered with Khan's blood. There's a super Tribble loose in the universe. This could be a villain coming up later on. Watch it.
Oh, I hope so. That would be a great turn for that series to take.
So I'm sure we will get more into that super Tribble on our super panel analysis of the Trouble with Tribbles.
Coming soon.
Yes, coming soon. Likely within the next 2 weeks from the release of this episode. So listen for that.
Yes.
All right. So we are going to close this episode out. Thanks again for listening. Catch up with us on social media, facebook.com/Tricorder Transmissions, or on Twitter at TTT_pod, or our own website, thetricordertransmissions.com. Thanks as always for listening, and we will see you again soon.
You may be wondering just how the Tribbles get around. It took the ingenuity of prop designer Jimmy Rugg to make these small 5-inch diameter creatures move about as the story required. He used Japanese-made walking electrical toy dogs. And then he cut away the exterior and inserted it into a Tribble body. And to make them seem lifelike, he inserted small balloons inside each Tribble, which were attached to air hoses that ran off stage out of sight. And the Tribbles appear to be pulsating by alternating the air pressure.
The Trouble with Tribbles is it's a break in Star Trek reality. We did a few other comedies, but The Trouble with Tribbles is truly one of the ones that says these people, these actors, are not only funny, but they're willing to be funny by letting them use those abilities in a story. We had a great deal of fun.
Alas, poor Yorick. Oh. Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott is prominently featured in The Trouble with Tribbles. James Doohan debuted in Star Trek's first season episode Where No Man Has Gone Before, and he went on to make significant contributions to the success of the Enterprise's mission and the series itself. And besides acting as Mr. Scott, he lent his voice to many characters throughout the series.